All right. So, good morning. Welcome today to this is the last class before reading week yet. So, thank you for being here. I know you probably have some midterms and assignments that are all coming up soon. So, this is a definitely a weird time to come, 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. But thank you for being here. Today is a very important topic, but interesting topic at the same time. This is weight painting for our rigs. So, today's plan will be as follows. We will be weight painting a model that I will provide from scratch. And so we will be doing a model preparation, looking at vertex groups, this lock section and transition workflow, which is the one that was pitched before, which seems to work pretty well for doing weight painting. Although with weight painting, you will find your own best workflow for it. It's a bit of just a trial and error thing, as most of this can be. And then we're also going to look at some tools, as in like different add-ons or different parts of the weight painting by default in Blender, how to get good deformations, and why we might use a systematic approach, as in why we might want to work on this in a very structured way versus just throwing weights all around. And then just like the practice, we're going to be practicing some weight painting. At least I'm going to be showing you the a little bit of doing this arm weight painting that we're going to be doing. And so yeah, so this is just to let you know that it will be starting next class week. So not next week, but following the reading week, we will have the in-lab assignment. So this will be a rig that will create a small section of an arm. This will be 5% of final grade for the class. It hopefully could be finishable in 3 hours during the lab, but you have some extra days to complete it up to Monday night, 11:59 p.m. So that's about 6 full days almost, and you get to just get this rig fully finished. It's just the arm. The things that we'll be looking for is like you don't have to have it fully realized as long as you show that you are applying the knowledge we've been learning so far, and you can show things like the relationship between the mesh, the deformations, mechanism, control bones, and then have some simple weight painting, possibly using some drivers to correct some topology when you bend the arm, for example. And this will be a discussion board submission. Videos or GIFs are ideal for this submission. And I did mention in the first week that I use GIFcam to do all my submissions. I did use that for my submissions in this class, but you can use any GIF software that you can that you have, right? There will be definitely more information on the actual assignment page. So if you're wondering about that, that's where you get more information. So what is weight painting and how is it relevant to rigging? So I provided this video. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but it's a great video that I'd say showcases the whole workflow of weight painting in Blender the best out of any video I've found on YouTube. So it's 14 minutes. If you want just a good video to showcase everything, I highly recommend this one. Yeah, right. It's great. It's great. I love it. This is what I was using to just refresh myself on weight painting a little bit. I highly recommend it at some point to watch it. But yeah, that's going to be on the slides under the week 4 of weight painting. But yeah, we're not going to.
I decided to get back into making tutorials just to see if it's something I
I'll just
still
skip through a
wanted to
little
do.
bit.
And what I have
But this is their
of
model
vertex
that they
groups
use.
must do the armature. It will create all of those groups for us. So let's parent the mesh to the armature specifically for weight painting. So all of these vertex groups will be automatically created. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to left click, select the mesh, it's got that outline, shift, left click to select the armature. It's very important you do it in that order. Then we're going to hit Control P and have the little parenting menu come up. And what we want is to set parent to armature to form with empty groups. And you'll see, if I click that, and then I go back over to our mesh, it's created all of these vertex groups for us where we can easily start weight painting in. You'll also notice now that the
Right. And so when you do with empty groups, then it doesn't automatically create the weights for you. It just creates the empty groups, as you can see there. And so that's one way to do the workflow, where you do every single weight by hand, which it gets you really fine results. You don't have to worry about weird um, baking issues, or just like the blender kind of giving a weird bone weight to some random bone, because you control everything, right? And so if I skim through, let's see.
just 0.6, so it's going to add 0.6 every single time.
Yeah, this is also a good
Notice
point.
I
I'll
can
talk.
stack
I'll
it,
touch on it in a little
try
bit.
to get to a weight of 0. You can weight paint perfectly fine with just the mixed brush, and that's what I use most of the time. However, there are 2 other blend modes that I recommend you use as well. So that would be add. So what that does is it can only make weights stronger. If I set this to 0.6, it's going to add 0.6 to that. But you'll notice I can stack it. So it's no longer trying to stop at just 0.6. So it's going to add 0.6 every single time.
Right. So yeah, when you are weight painting, you'll have your own brush that you use, and so by default, the blend mode is mixed. So it tries to bring the values to whichever point from 0 to 1 you've set. But then the blend add mode will only add the increments of the weight here. So if you set it to 0.2, it'll just keep adding 0.2 weight every single stroke. And then if you hold control, you can then do the opposite, where you subtract 0.2 every stroke. And I'll show you that in a little bit. But yeah, this video does go through literally all things, also masking.
It's a perfect clean edge. I didn't
So
accidentally weight more or less than I wanted to.
you can see we only grabbed the clothing here, not the arm itself or anything underneath it, and that's through through masking, selecting the vertices in edit mode,
Here, meaning
and then we can access those masked vertices and faces at the top here in our screen. Right. So just this video is great. I highly recommend you all to look through that. But yeah, we're going to go on to the next part. So what are weighted vertex groups? As you saw, when we parented the mesh to the armature, we created empty groups, and then we had all these different groups here under our mesh, right? And so weights are a float value from 0 to 1 given to a vertex. And the value of this vertex corresponds to the percentage it is influenced by the deformation bones in the rig. So a weight value of 1, that's if it's fully weighted to a bone, it will be fully influenced to the movements of that bone. As you can see in this left visual right here, there is a bone that it's following 100%. A weight of 0.5, for example, is half the influence. So you can see that this mesh is kind of going in between these two bones. And then a weight of 0 means no influence, meaning that it won't be connected or be influenced by the bone. Pretty straightforward. But the thing with vertex groups is they're not just for using, or not just for armatures and like deformations, but they are also for any sort of procedural texturing or your own custom workflow where you want to have certain vertices masked for a certain use case. So it's not just for armature deformations. Vertex groups are very useful for many things with that you can access your mesh vertices at the vertex level versus just the entire mesh level. It's very useful. And so that's what we're worrying about today is the deformation vertex groups. And so our meshes will have a vertex group for each deformation bone. And these bones, these deformation bones, are what move our mesh. And so in most rig setups, the control bones will move the deformation bones, and the deformation bones will move the mesh, right? And so we can edit these groups in a separate tab called weight paint, which I'll get into in a little bit. Before we would be weight painting, though, we would want to prepare our models for the weight painting process. And so how would we do that? The first thing we would do is we would remove the existing deformation vertex groups of our model if we want to start from scratch, because we don't want any confusion of what vertex groups correspond to what part of our rig. unless you have data that you do not want to erase, like previous deformation weights that you created that you don't want to repaint again, or if you have custom vertex groups for let's say procedural modeling or texturing or whatever you want to use those for, you only delete the vertex groups that would be at direct conflict with your deformations. And so in a lot of cases, you just make sure this is empty. And then next, you would ensure adequate topology. So we need to provide enough polygons to allow for smooth interpolation between the bones deforming the mesh. And then areas around sharp bends, such as the elbows, the knees, and let's say like your fingers as well, require extra loop cuts. Also around your face for sure, require lots of loop cuts to allow the stretch to happen smoothly, right? Because when you have like a bunch of vertices really close to each other and then you stretch it out for like a bend, let's say, all those vertices will sort of keep that shape nice and smooth, right? And so the face especially requires a lot of loop cuts around the eyes and mouth where most of the expressions occur. Today I'm not showing you how to weight paint a face. Unfortunately, the, I'm showing you the arm and then the fingers and the hands, just because that's kind of what works for this rig that I'm going to be having you all work with. But you can see here that the there are some extra loop cuts around the elbow, not a crazy amount, but just a little bit more. And so whenever it's bent, those extra vertices will keep the shape nice and smooth without having like a sharp like point if it's just a single loop cut there, right? And you can see also the fingers have a lot of uh, geometry for this reason because they are such a dense and complicated part of your body in the way they move your fingers that it needs all these extra loop cuts to make sure those bends are not all not good looking, right? And so you can see in the shoulder here, when you bend it down, there is it's like an even amount of geometry, but having like just a generous amount keeps any sort of sharp bends or sharp unnatural looking areas kind of showing up, right? And yeah, lastly is the face as well. And then also like the hips here, you can see all the loops. It's important to make sure the loops go in a direction that makes the most sense for your your body, as in obviously you're going to want loop cuts going around the torso and the chest like a perfect circle around. You don't want some weird angles, right? Because the way your spine works, of course, it goes straight up, and so you want the loops to kind of follow the path of your actual bones. Same with your arms, and I mean, with your face, it's very much like you have very dense loops around the eyes and the mouth because that's where all your expressions are, right? And so giving that geometry allows for those stretches and movement nice and smoothly. All right, so this is a reference guide website that's provided on the slideshow, and this is very helpful. It provides, I'll just show you quickly. It showcases topology and how to kind of like wrap your head around these different areas that you might want to be considering the most when you're making your models or when you are working on someone else's model. You want to make sure that it actually has a lot of these features. Specifically around the face, you want like these loops, of course, and the fingers definitely need to have, or the hands need to have a lot more geometry, as you can see here. And then around every single knuckle, there's these extra faces, right? You see all this. Just a lot of great photos and reference material, right? Instead of having to search all over for different topology references on your Pinterest. That's what I usually do, Pinterest or ArtStation or whatnot. You can just come here and yeah, good reference. Oops. So, part 3, binding mesh to the armature. So before we even start our weight painting, we need to make sure the mesh is a child object of the armature. And so the way we do that is we select the mesh first. As you saw in the video, you select the mesh first, and then you shift select the armature. Whatever you select second is always going to be the parent. It's like the future parent. And then once you click Control P, then you parent the mesh to the armature. There are several options to choose from when you do that. So we have the default parent options, all these object, and then these bold ones down here we don't need to worry about. The ones we worry about are the armature deform. And so there's the main one here, armature deform, and then 3 other ones underneath it. Armature deform just uses pre-existing weights, to my knowledge. So the already made vertex groups that you have created. And so that is good if you wanted to disconnect your mesh from the armature and you want to make some edits without any sort of clash, or if you made a new mesh and then you transferred weights to it from a different mesh with a similar structure or a similar frame, and then you want to attach it to a armature with the same bone structure. So that's a way to keep the same groups. Empty groups creates fully empty groups within the mesh itself. So that's if you want to start from scratch. Envelope weights is a bit weird. No, I don't think we really use that much at all. And I'm not too sure exactly what it does again. I'm not too certain on that. But automatic weights at the bottom is one that you would also use from time to time. It's a great start, but it's definitely not perfect because it's an algorithm that calculates the weights for you. So if you have, let's say your fingers where they're all really close, it might miscalculate and it might have weight for this, let's say this bone here. It might have some weight on this finger as well. And then you might have to fix that up later and it might be annoying, right? So it's good to know which one to use each one. When you enter weight paint mode, the way you do that is you select the armature first and then you shift select the mesh. So it's the opposite order as the parenting. And so this kind of specifies you are going to, because you're selecting the mesh primarily, there will be this option under the, like if you go to the top left, there is the weight paint option. And this allows you to edit the weight paints and enter that menu, which we'll see in a little bit. And because you already have the armature also selected, you can alt select the bone that you want to weight paint when in weight paint mode versus having to go to the bone menu on the side and have to find the right, guess the right one, guess the right group that you're editing. You can just alt select the bone that you want to edit. And I'll show you how to do that. So number 4 is weight paint workspace. We are going to familiarize ourselves with the weight paint tools. So different menus are available to us. These are just a few of them for now. We have the brush palette, we have the weight tab, and then the brush tab. So starting off with the brush palette, this is at the top right of the weight painting menu. And so this is where you can access different weight paint brushes for you to use. The highlighted orange options are related to the brush tool itself. So it's not related to the brush palette, but it's good to know that that is all at the very top. You can access the weight, the size, and the strength of your brushes right beside the palette itself. And you can see in the palette, I had this one preset I saved when I was working earlier. But there's other options like average, blur, smear, etc. Right? So if you want to get really technical with the different brush strokes and then really customize it under the tool panel, you can do that and then save the preset. And so, I guess it was offset a little bit, but this is the weights menu. The weights menu provides us with several options what we can use to improve our weight painting workflow. I highlighted the options that were most relevant, or at least I use the most when doing my weight painting. It's kind of offset right now. It shouldn't be like this, but it's supposed to be under set weight, smooth, and I believe it's mirror, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, but yeah, all of these you'll be using pretty like whenever you need to, pretty decently. And yeah, it's good to know that as well. And it's at the top left as well, right next to the palette, and then next to the tab. And so the brush tool tab is on the right side panel. This is where you can quickly adjust parameters related to your brush and each stroke you make. And so I highlighted the options of greatest significance, to me at least, and I recommend the add brush, as you saw in the video, as you can add weights and increments up or down. And so the reason why I prioritize to show you these options here is because these ones give you the best results overall when you are painting. It's the least headache inducing because it's super annoying when you're fighting against the weight painting. And so obviously the add paint or add blend mode allows you to do like strokes to add more and more and more weight versus just setting it to one value and that's it. So this is great. And then the weights, size, and strength, that's also the same as these up here. It's just more ways to access the same content. And then so the weight is the strength of that weight value from 0 to 1. So anything 0 is going to be blue, anything 0.5 is green, anything 1 is red. And you'll see what I mean by that. The size is the size of the stroke, and then the strength is how, it's kind of like the opacity, how much it tries to weigh this much. So if I set it to 0.5 and I have the strength 0.5, the first stroke will be 0.25 and the second one will be 0.5, right? And so under advanced, I turned off front faces only because when you are weight painting, usually if you do like the finger, for example, when you weight paint the tip, you want it to be the entire thing. You don't want it to be just the top of it. So when you have front faces only off, when you start painting the top, it also can grab the bottom. So it's important to know if you do not want faces behind a certain face to be weight painted, you have to turn that back on. And then this one's really important actually. Fall off shape, sphere or projected. So sphere, whenever you start drawing, wherever that surface is, will create like a little sphere projected from it. And so that's really good for if you're trying to do really fine results and if you're at like really obscure angles, that's good. But then if you're doing projected fall off shape, then it just kind of cuts through the entire mesh. And so that's really good if you're doing the block out of the weight paints at the very beginning. So if you have like the torso, for example, and you have it on projected, if you just start drawing, it's gonna, everything through that mesh is going to be weighted to that value. It's not good if you are painting like your fingers and you're kind of viewing it from this angle because it's just gonna cut through your entire mesh. So you just make sure if you're getting weirdness, you might want to switch these values. Next is symmetry. And so with symmetry, you want to turn on mirror vertex groups because when you do that, you get the bones that you are, if you're working on like the shoulder bones, for example, if you're weight painting those, it'll reflect that onto the left side or the right side or whichever side. So you don't have to paint the weights twice or you don't have to transfer it later. So that's helpful as well. And then lastly is auto normalize. This one's really great because what it does is it essentially makes sure all of your every single vertex group or every single vertex, its value does not surpass 1 out of all of the vertex groups, right? And so I'll show you that in a little bit. But yeah, next is the weight paint overlays. This is at the very top right. This is where you can change how the weight paints are viewed in the viewport. I just kind of leave it as default, at least for me. And then lastly is vertex locking. So when you're done painting weights in a specific group, you can lock it here so that it won't receive influence when changing a nearby bone weight value, right? And so that's good if you are finalized with a certain part of your weight painting. You don't want it to change when you're painting another part. And I'll explain why this is important. So in the weight paint workflow, this is a good procedure to follow. This is one of the many you can find of how you can paint these weights. So the system that I'm presenting here is the vertex locking plus auto normalizing uh, thing, where you can auto normalize, which keeps the vertex values always equal to 1, as I mentioned before, across all the vertex groups. And so when you lock a vertex group, it would prevent that value from being normalized by another value. So if you're editing, let's say, the shoulder or the upper arm, and you set all these to like 1, and then it just kind of blends out to 0 on each side, and you don't want that to change, you can just lock that group. And so if you start painting on your forearm and then you accidentally paint a little bit over here, it won't change anything, because auto normalize will kind of automatically adjust the weights on a different area to kind of offset it to keep it at 1, right? It's a little hard to wrap your head around, but this is a good way to work through this to make sure also later on that you won't have a headache when you realize all these groups that you worked on so hard had their vertex groups kind of wiped out. And then explicit sectioning. So using either selection methods or a hard brush, we can heavily weight a portion of a mesh for each bone. So this is kind of like the blockout phase, where you just take your brush at maximum 1 value and then just kind of start painting those areas around each bone like this. So around the, let's say, the torso here, you just paint everything around there fully red, right? And it can be very rough at first, and you can have very ugly deformations, but this is just the way to get started, especially when you're starting from scratch. To then later on, we can refine it with other tools like smoothing. So we can smooth our weight or our vertex groups with shift select, which we can then brush. It's like a brush where we can just kind of drag and then smoothen out those vertices a bit, or those weight paint vertices a bit. There's also a smooth operator that is very useful, which does it procedurally. You don't have to touch the model. We just kind of set the smooth intensity, and then it just kind of smooths the entire part of our weights for us. And we can also use the gradient tool for this as well, but the gradient tool is a bit more tricky to work with because it kind of affects the entire mesh all at once, from my experience.
There's also the blur tool. That's what I've been using for the past several years.
Oh, the blur tool.
Yeah, like so at the boundary where the weight ends, where it goes from red to very faintly transitions down, you blur that, like it's smooth. Same thing as the smooth one.
Ooh.
Never actually tried the smooth one.
Yeah, the smooth is just what like I use because it's just there, and it's really easy. It's really quick to do because it's just the shift, and then you kind of paint with it. Yeah. But I should try the blur. I know it's a brush, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna seem like a very stupid question, but I promise there's a reason I'm asking this. So what is the difference of weight on a vertex like 0.1 and 1? It's supposed to be how much that vertex moves when the bone moves, right?
Yeah. So are you asking like what the difference between it being really low and then just 1?
Pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Of course. So when it's at 0, it means it's not influenced by that bone at all. So whenever you select a certain bone of the rig, you'll see some areas are going to be red, and some areas are going to be kind of a mixture between, like, they're going to be like green, and then some are going to be blue. Most of them are going to be blue because that means it has 0 influence. And so anything with 0 means it doesn't get affected by that bone. Anything with a color from green up to red will have a stronger and stronger influence. And then anything at red is just a perfect 1-to-1. So if you move that bone,
So
it'll move with it perfectly.
0.5 will move 0.5 with the bone?
It'll move like half. Yeah. Approximately. If that makes sense, right? I have a GIF earlier.
It makes sense. I'm asking because I think my blender's broken.
Oh yeah?
a value of 0.01 is still moving at a full value of 1.
Well, that's oh yes.
It's not weight any other bones, so that's the only weight it has. So that's why you normalize it. So so say this arm, right? If I rotate this, this bit of the arm will also have weight to the shoulder bone here. So that's why this weight here might have 0.5 on this arm, but that also means it has 0.5 on the shoulder. But since yours has no other weight to stop it from moving, it's the only weight it has, so it's effectively the same as well. But autonormalized normally would fix that, so that's normally nothing to do. Yes, Marty's right.
Yeah, that's what the normalizing does. Because I did forget to mention that actually. Yeah, when you set a very small value at first, it's going to instantly set it up to 1 just to kind of normalize it, right? So that's what the blockout phase is for. You just kind of set every single bone to its maximum value. And then from there, you can sort of add or subtract a little bit to make sure all those bones, because you don't want any part of your armature to have zero weights or zero weight values. And so when it's being normalized, it makes sure it's always set to 1. And it's about balancing that weight value across your entire mesh.
So is this when I use the normalized button or don't use it? Because so you would have normalized toggle on as you're brushing your weights, and it'll fix them as you weight paint. Um, it's just a toggle the brush settings.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was right here. There's auto normalize right there. I'll showcase what it does when it's on versus off when I do like the actual um, showcase. But yeah, it's a bit weird at first because it's just you're like, I didn't. It's set to 0.1 and it got shot up to 1. Like what's going on?
No. I mean, the value of the vertice is actually like I did not auto normalize. Yeah, but the reason that it's moving fully with you is because that's the only vertex group that has any weight at the moment is the one you just brushed. So the mesh has no other vertex group holding onto it, so it can move entirely. But once you paint the rest of the mesh, that all will go away, don't worry. It's really stupid. Harder, yeah, it's really weird at first, but once the rest of the mesh gets painted in, it'll stop doing
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we followed a process like this because we don't want to miss anything when we go back over things later. Uh, it makes the workflow. This is what Marcus wrote when he was saying this. Makes it like less non-destructive, though it's a bit more tedious. Not sure exactly what he means by that because I don't think it's very non-destructive. I feel like this is a pretty destructive process overall. You're kind of painting it, right?
Well, it doesn't hurt the model.
It doesn't hurt the model.
The ability to clear the weights on the given vertex group.
That is true, right? Yeah, but I find this process pretty in depth. You're kind of figuring it out as you go, so it's definitely tedious for sure. But here are some weight paint examples. This is a good procedure. These are good procedures to follow when painting weights. And so this is the difference between auto weights versus manual. Both are good, but the best practice is to always edit the weights manually at some point, right? So you can do auto weights at like the beginning, but you don't know if it's being normalized properly. You don't know how the algorithm's doing very close by fingers or your face. I don't even want to begin to imagine how it affects the face when you do auto weights.
Oh god, I have not tried the face with auto weights. I'd be terrified to do
Yeah, right. That seems like horrifying, right? But yeah, you're always going to be auto or manually weight painting at some point. These are some references from the textbook for the upper body, so you can see just how much the red here is the fully weighted values, so things that are set to 1, and you can see it kind of blends from that hot kind of heating up 1 value all the way to blue. And so there's this gradient here. And so this gradient allows for when you move that part of the shoulder, so it doesn't just instantly kind of abruptly move the shoulder. You can also see on the elbow there is like this smooth gradient as well at the wrist here. And yeah, Then there's the lower body as well. You can see that same smooth transition. And then, yeah, also at the knee as well, and the foot or ankle, and then the toes, right? So that kind of gradient is what you want to see for every single bone to have like that smooth transition, right? And so this is just how to mirror your like weight paints. You would mirror the rig, right? So from one side to the next, you would reparent it, and then you would mirror the weights as well. But the way I set up this model, it's going to automatically be, you're going to be able to automatically just paint one side and it's going to set it to the other side. So you don't have to worry about manually weight mirroring over. And so now it's practice time. So I uploaded the file with the weights removed, and you're more than welcome to give it a try and see how you do. I'm going to be walking through it as well to show you the process of rigging. We're going to be focusing on the shoulder up to the fingers. And this is a good way to learn how to weight paint manually. And then if you want, you could also try to add auto weight painting and then kind of see how it affects the model and adjust it to your liking. So it's working familiar with weight painting right now. I do believe you have to do the weight painting for the face. Is it due tonight?
I think it's tomorrow.
Or is it tomorrow? That's
I
fine.
lost my file, so I need to redo it, and I need to submit last week's weekly.
It's tedious.
I lost my.
Sorry?
No, that's that. That's next week or the week after.
Yeah, because Richard said he moved the
It,
judgment.
the,
For
talking about the first like actual
the whole
assignment.
rig.
oh, the whole
Not
rig.
just
I believe it was moved, right?
Yeah.
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 No, what's it called? I did the original base rig on my PC at home. It's not here, and I need to submit last week's weekly.
Dang. Well, all the best. I will. So let's see. So under week 4, I did provide the weight paint practice underscore int rigging 2026 blend.
Yeah, I checked yesterday.
And so this is the, if you open this Blender file, this will have that rig that we saw from earlier. And I mean, I'm not perfect at weight painting, so correct me if I'm wrong when I'm doing some of this, of course. But I'm going to show you just kind of what I know to be the process for this, somewhat. So here is our mesh. And so the first thing I did was I made sure to change the view, like the type of bones we're viewing. So by default, it's of course set to octahedral, and that's a bit cluttered and hard to see, especially near the fingers. They're too big, these bones, to see the actual weighting you're doing. So I like to set it to wire, like so. And then I also turned off the axes just for now, and then the names, especially the names, just so you can see exactly what you're weighing whenever you're like actually doing this. And it's still in front because we still want to see where we want to select each bone, right? And so I already mirrored the rig over ahead of time, so you can see when I click on the armature and I shift or control tab to go into pose mode. There's a few sticks here. It's a bit hard to see when it's displayed like the wire, but if I go to octahedral, you can see that there's some simple control setup. So these top 2 bones here, they are not color coded, but these are controls for IK, arm IKs like this. Just very simple, and then a pull vector as well. And so this is just a way so you can see how the rig is deforming as you're weight painting, right? And so there's like the shoulders as well. So simple body rig. And also there's also, if if I select this bone right here, it's a bit hard to see. You can control that leg IK. It's not a perfect rig, but it does the job for what we're doing today. So I'm going to set these back to wire, and then I'm going to, remember, select the armature first, and then shift select the mesh second, control tab, which opens up this pie menu. You can also access the same options here on the side. We're going to go to weight paint. When we do that, our model turns blue. And we're like, whoa, what's going on here? So we can't start painting right away, or we can, but what that's doing is it's creating a brand new vertex group for that first, because we haven't set empty groups here. It just sort of creates a new group based on the bone that we're selecting in the armature itself. So right now it's setting it to the control bone because that's the last one I was selecting when I was showing you the movement of this rig itself. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that we set empty groups to this mesh before we start working on it. So we're going to select the mesh, and then we're going to shift select the armature, control P. Remember, armature deform with empty groups. And so now you can see within this rig here, we see all the deformation bones only. And that's important because, remember, naming conventions are so important. So these, if I go into here, the control bones and the MCH bones weren't transferred over as well, because Blender only wants to make deformation bones actually deform the mesh, so it only created empty groups for def bones. You can see here.
Is this between our shoulder bone?
Sorry,
I just realized this model is not a shoulder bone.
does it not?
No.
Oh dear.
It's clavicle bone.
Yeah, it's the clavicles here.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I
Right
didn't.
up front.
I didn't make this rig or this armature, so I guess that is missing. Is it? Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah. 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 But it does the job for what we do, for what we want to do for now. So if I select the armature and then shift select the mesh itself, and then control tab, weight paint. So now we're in this menu. And so what we can do is we can alt and then click. You see, alt left click, and we can select any of those bones along our mesh here. You can see all of them have 0 weight value added to them. And so what we want to do is, before we even start painting, we're going to see these menus around our screen. We have at the top left the different presets, brush presets that we can make. If we click N and then go to Tool, we can see the active brush tool, and then all those options that we saw earlier. So by default, it's going to paint in mix mode. Also, I do not like seeing these white lines here. It just kind of shows like that. What's that exactly?
That's the contour line. You can disable that in the weight paint overlay.
Exactly. Yeah, in the weight paint overlay up here, I wanted to disable those because I don't like how they look. Yeah. It just kind of makes it hard to read the weight painting. So even if I set the weight to 0.05 or something, it's going to set the weight to maximum, to fully red. And that's because there is 0 weight value and it's normalizing. So if I turn off auto normalize, you'll see now it'll just paint very faintly, right? That's not ideal though, because when everything's normalized to 1, we will avoid as much issues with our deformations as possible. So this is the blockout phase. I'm going to, first of all, set auto-normalize on, set mirror vertex groups on, set the fall-off shape to projected so that it just kind of cuts through the entire mesh, and then set the blend mode to add. And so I'm going to leave the fall-off shape like this, like a default. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remember Alt, select this first bone right. I'm going to select it right here, just in the middle. This is the spine 01. And then I'm just going to paint. Drag and paint it so it's red. And because it's set to projected, it just kind of cuts all the way through. And you'll notice that I can't really erase it right now because it's setting the initial value, so there is nothing to erase to, right? So just don't worry if you kind of mess up a little bit like that. You can fix it later. What we're doing is we're just kind of mapping out these main groups here, like so. You can see also because we selected the bone while we were editing the weight paints, we can rotate whichever bone we're selecting. You can see the movement of those weights with it. And this part's very funky because we will only have very small areas weighted right now, so the mesh will just kind of freak out on us. And so that's why we're just kind of making sure we block out everything right now, right? Like this is our block out phase, right? And you can see now, you'll notice that the spine 02 sort of has a very like the opposite, exact opposite influences, and that's because of the auto normalization. So that these bones, especially right here, they will always equal 1. So this is always 1. It's not going to be, if it has red here and then red also here, it would have 2 total as its influences, and so that's not good. That would just cause issues, right? And so now I'm going to go in the front facing as well. Do the shoulder here, or the upper arm. Kind of drag it. Forearm. And the closer I zoom in, the smaller and finer the brush is, because you can see it's not changing size as I do this. So if I bend, let's say, because this is already attached to a control, an IK control, we can't just rotate this arm here. We have to select the actual control bone and then just kind of move it. So you can see right now, it's bending decently right here, but this hand does not have any influence right now, so it just kind of doesn't move. And I wonder, for the hand, is it good practice just to weight the entire hand first and then do the fingers afterwards?
The way I do it is I actually do this in edit mode. Like I range select the bones around each finger and then just click select the vertex group and assign so we're giving away 1 and then
Oh, yes.
between the bones.
Oh, yeah. So that's when so if you go into edit mode, so if you click tab, then you can select those loop cuts.
Well,
right?
and then you just assign the vertex group and you're giving away 1 and then you can blend between the two.
Yeah. Right, because whenever you select any vertices or faces in edit mode here, if you tab back into because tab will always just go back to weight paint mode, so edit weight paint, you can then select up here and it'll only mask that part of the fingers that you selected. So I'm just going to select the bone first and go into there, and then I assigned that shortcut to Control X. That's my assigned weight value. See?
Yeah.
I believe it's not set to anything by default.
Yeah, I just do it in edit mode. I don't do it in the weight group because Yeah, like the select vertex group is the sign at the bottom.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, yeah, assign. And then if I go in here, yeah, you're right. That's clever. I like to visualize it, so I do this quite often, but I feel like that's faster.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see I'm gonna go back to the actual wrist here, and I'm just gonna paint that.
Why does this not look like two little red ones? It's like his shitty skin.
I know it's weird, right?
It's such a weird model.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
was
kind of
wondering that
confused
earlier.
me.
So I was like, yeah, there's
Yeah,
no way.
it's a bit strange. It wasn't needed for me to make an entire new rig just to show weight painting, so
Yeah.
I didn't do that. But yeah, it's a bit odd. So I can select the thumb here and just kind of paint out this area. And then back on here, I can just, oops, paint this part. So I'm just kind of going through the entire fingers here, all the fingers. And so now all these parts of the thumb will have a full weight at some point. You can see right here we have some extra geometry that it will bend around somewhat. The bone is a bit higher up, you can see, so it's not deforming properly. And so that's why you would want to add extra loop cuts there, right? I can add a loop cut there, right? And then now, oops, I'll have to recreate some this. Oh dear. There you go. So you can see I can just click R to rotate it. Oh, I guess I grab some. That's an issue with projection mode or projected fall off shape. It just kind of cuts through the entire mesh. So let's say I paint like this. See, it just kind of cuts through everything. And that's not good. Say again? Unfortunately, no. But yeah, that's why when we do it by hand, we can really quickly catch those errors versus when you do auto weight paint, it can just if your mesh has the hands like this, it will really easily add influence to the wrong areas because in this case your legs and your hands are so close. It's just gonna kind of blend the two together really strangely, which is not ideal. You see here, I can just like bend them down, and you want to do it in a way that's realistic. So you won't be able to bend it too far, but just like enough. So I'm just kind of showing when I deform it now. Oh, it's kind of ugly, right? We gotta fix that up a bit. We'll do that later though because we just want to finish the blocking out. But yeah, for the fingers, we don't have to paint it, right? We could just select those loops or just all those vertices in general. You lay your own fingers. How does the skin around your bones move around? I'm sort of grabbing those vertices I think matter in this case. And your geometry really affects your ability to do this somewhat easily because I'm trying to guess how far exactly I should bring that, but I'm gonna do this much for now, maybe a little less. Now I'll keep that. And so from there, I select that finger, I can just assign, and boom. Next up, I can select that part of my finger. Just select all those. Assign. Right. And then lastly, I can just select this part of my finger and select the ones that are at the very end. Right? Because if you start painting, and these fingers are, since they're so close, when you paint near the edge here, it's also going to catch these fingers as well, and that's pain to fix. So I do recommend selecting it and then assigning it. Oops, oh, that's wrong. You see now, we're getting some movement. Still a bit rough in some areas, but it's definitely somewhere, right? We definitely have some deformations happening. And so next up, I will select this part of the finger. And so that's why it's good to have loop cuts as well, because it's easy to just Alt-Shift-Select loop cuts. But if it's not a loop cut, it's much more painful. Like right here, I can't just select around the entire loop. I have to just select extra vertices. Maybe I'll select some faces. And this is a reason topology matters. I don't even want to tell you how rough, Crowan from Stormhammer, his fingers, whack. It's so bad. It's just like, because it was auto retopology in ZBrush, so it's just like, it's really bad. It's not. That's why we didn't have to worry about it as much, because I think our animator used Cascader, so it did auto rigging for the fingers, which it's not perfect, but it saved us the pain of having to do it ourselves. Oops. So from here, I'm going to assign, and boom. And lastly, it's a lengthy process, and especially the face, it's a it's a process. You can see here, next finger. I'm just trying to make sure the last loop cut is around the edge of that bone there. So this one up to here. Assign. Next up, those ones, and then assign. All right, because the one that you select in here, the one you alt select here, is the one selected in the vertex group. And that's important to know. There we go. Assign. Next up here. Oops. Assign. Next up, assign. Oops. Forgot to select the new bones. Oops. Back to weight paint mode. I'm going to select these ones or this bone. That's fine. There. So if we try it out now, we can see rotate, rotate, rotate. It's not bad. I can just kind of bend all the fingers now. You can see it's overall, it's doing the right overall movement. If I get close, you can see there's really sharp cutoffs that don't blend nicely. And we'll fix that in a bit, but I'm gonna go back. So first select the bones and then shift select the mesh, weight paint. And so I just wanna make sure, if you get to a point where you have all these bones moved, rotated like this, and you wanna kind of set them all back to 0, or to their default pose, you have to go back to object mode and then select the armature itself, and then enter pose mode. Click A to select all, pose, clear transform, all. And that just fixes all those movements you made when you were testing it out. Back to weight paint mode. I could start painting up the fingers a bit more. Just do like, actually, because now we already have these values at the fingers set to 1, I can set the weight value to something really low. And if I start painting, it'll set the value to, because it's normalizing, it'll set it to 1 until those actual fingers, and it'll just sort of stop there, right? And because we're using additive blending, it will add 0.25 every single time we start painting. And remember, right now we still have projected on. So if I paint at this angle, it's going to cut through the entire finger. And so if you're trying to paint very small areas like this, you want to turn it just back to sphere. So it's localized, right? And because now these thumb parts have value, weight value. If let's say I accidentally paint a bit like that, I can now control paint to kind of subtract there, and it adds it back to the thumb itself. See? So now I can move the thumb, and I can be like, okay, I want to subtract a bit, or I could just shift drag and it smoothens it, so it kind of blends between the two. Right. So you can see your own fingers, your own thumb, and how the skin kind of bends there. Shift, drag to balance it between. So we're just breaking up that very sharp transition with a nice blend. Right. And I guess right here, this part doesn't need to have as much influence right there. I can hold control to subtract. And then shift to blend. And so the weights will only be influenced like wherever there is actual vertexes, it will change. So if you have a large section without any sort of mesh data, you won't be able to change the weight values. So you have to have that geometry to actually make the weight changes. Here we go, like this. So right now I click once to add a bit more value, and then I click shift to blend it a bit. And so you said use blur, right?
Yeah, blur tool. I've never
Blur
tried
tool.
smooth one though. So
Oh, wait, that's kind of. Oh, you just kind of like it's like you're dragging it, right?
well, the smear tool is drag around it.
Oh, okay. So smear would pull
That's
it.
better. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So blur just kind of.
It's kind of blend it over there. Right? Yeah.
Oh, that's actually really good too. Thanks for that.
No problem.
Yeah. And so it's important though because you have to make sure to save these brushes before you close your blender, because right now you see there's the star under the paint that I changed. So like make sure you save that. It's because it's a default asset, you have to duplicate it. So I'm just going to call this Josiah wait or Josiah default, and it's under user library, and then the brushes, weight paint brushes, right? So I can paint a bit more. There we go. I'm gonna try out the blur. Oh yeah, that's so smooth. That's really good. So if I bend the thumb here, we can see in action that those different percentages of influence. So anything red here is moving 1-to-1 with that bone. The green area right here, this is all around 0.5 green is. This is probably a little less because it's green is here and then this is a little bluer. So that's about 0.5, 0.45 of influence. And so it only moves about half as much. And then up here where it's blue, it just does not move at all, right? And this part of the thumb, there's a lot more of a blend. So you can see it's much more seamless. So I can kind of leave that for now. I'll leave it for now because I want to work on other parts of the weight painting. I don't like how, so you can see that it normalized some of that when I was blurring this a bit. It added some of that weight value back to the actual hand here, which is not ideal. Oh, we can also see that there's some areas here that are not influenced at all. And that's important. That's why we bend it like this to check. But I'm just going to go back to my weight paint preset and just control erase all that right there. All right, And now I want to fix up this ugly part of the hand. What I'm going to do for that is, let's see. Maybe I want to, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to select the top, the actual palm here. I'm going to set the weight really low. Set the fall off shape to projected and just make sure I paint into that part of the finger cracks there. So now they have influence, but because my weight's set so low, it's not going to heavily influence the rest of the fingers here. There we go. And so hopefully, okay, we got a few more. I'll set this even lower. There we go. And so now I can select this part of the finger. If I do blur, you can see it just kind of blurs it out a bit. Smoothens out this part, this crack of the finger as well. I can kind of bring it out a bit. Yeah, I like how blur is very gradual. Sort of bring those, you want to bring those two parts of the finger, those weights closer together, like this, right? Because as we do that, you'll notice there's a better bend up the top. But at the bottom here, it's a little too much. We might want to go back to this part of the finger and sort of add some more, let's say, yeah, start adding a bit more weight here. Let's see. You see already we're getting much nicer movement at the bottom of the finger. It won't be perfect. If you want it to be perfect, you have to use drivers and shape keys. We can get pretty close with just kind of adjusting our weights as such. I like that a lot, actually. I'm going to keep it like this. What about the tip of the finger? You can see right now it's very gradual. It's pretty ugly. So what we do, because we already set the blockout as already, we already set that blockout values. We can just kind of go to, I'm going to do blur and sort of blend between the two. Go back, alt select this part of the bone, start blending, and fix that part up. Maybe I can add a bit more of a gradual. There you go. And factors like your topology and your bone placement matter a lot. So sometimes the issue isn't the weight paints you're making, it's just the armature mesh you're given. So you can see here, oh, at the first part of the finger, the bottom here is not moving at all the way we want it to. So I'm going to go face the bottom. I'm going to turn off projected to back to sphere so that it doesn't blend all the way through. I'm going to paint out some more influence. There we go. That's better. Still a bit of a sharp kind of, it's overlapping a lot here. So I'm going to subtract a bit. And remember, because we already did the block out, the normalization will transfer those weights back to the finger itself here. You see? It's sort of transferring it over. So the value is always 1. Here we go. You see your finger, at least mine, naturally goes only about 90% or 9 degrees. So you should aim to make sure that that 9-degree angle looks pretty decent. So I think that looks okay for now. See the other fingers curl pretty nicely. If I leave object mode, and let's say just turn off all of the everything here, this is the way you can see the deformations the best. This topology is not the highest on this model, but you can still see that it's bending pretty nicely. It kind of has that bulging of the skin around those areas that you would expect. There's a bit, I'm noticing a bit of some weird stretching issues here. It's not the worst, but it looks pretty solid nonetheless. The shading's just a bit off right here, I think. Right, it's a slow process, but it's very fun. Trust me. Next up, I'm gonna bring, and ideally, I mean, you can definitely kind of make your finger kind of go beyond its default position upwards. But naturally, you're not going to do that very often, so you don't have to worry as much about this angle. You want to worry more about how it looks facing downwards. And so I'm just going to blend it in a bit more. It's very strong right now, so I'm going to blur. Blur. Nice smooth transition. Oh, we have some vertices that are not influencing at all. Right, because I turned off projected mode, so it didn't cut all the way through. So if I do this again, if I paint over it with the blur brush, it should just cut all the way through and blur everything like such, as such. And that's beautiful. I don't have to worry about it going up like this. That's not natural, at least for me. We'll paint in some more, smoothing that out. Oh wait, when I hold shift, I believe it's using the blur tool, I think.
Yep.
I guess it
shows you see on the brush tapping.
yeah, it goes to blur. Unless it's just using the one that, let me just test something. Okay, yeah, it is just going to blur. So I guess I was using blur the whole time. It's kind of annoying because every single year with one of these games, I'm primarily an environment artist, right?
Yeah.
However, my team usually expects at least one character model from me, and so that is always the bane of my existence for a few months, a month or two. I'm just kind of like over, thinking how this rig is gonna work out, how this character's gonna look. It's not fun. It's fun, but it's a pain. These deformations. What about this? Oh, look at that ugly shoulder movement. That's ugly. I guess I can look at the shoulder now. And hopefully, if this all mirrored properly, oh, it did not. Oh, that's not nice. So I guess it didn't mirror over properly. That's really annoying. There's probably a few reasons for that. Maybe the mirroring of the mesh wasn't perfect, but that would require a weight transfer later on, which is a little annoying, but we can try to do that in a little bit. So I didn't add any weight to the actual clavicle here, so I'm going to add a little bit now. I'm going to go projected. Probably should have done this before, but I didn't. Now I'm going to smooth it a bit. Right now. You can see that I did not do the neck at all, so I need to do that right now. There we go. Blend it all together. It's hideous. There we go. And the head's just going to have a full red influence. And if I did it at this angle, it'll just cut through the entire model. Not ideal. There we go. Shift, blend. You can see so the head itself would rotate only probably around left and right, and a bit up and down. But the neck would do a lot more of the like bigger movements, right? Like moving to the side is your neck, right? So if I rotate this to the side, you can see the head is. I gotta blend between it a bit better. And if I move the neck, it's moving a bit too much of the body itself. So I just gotta remove some influence. And you can see right now, if I try to sort of subtract this area right here, it's not subtracting. It's staying red because there's no other area. It knows where to normalize it to. So I got to make sure in here to kind of in the actual chest or spine to blend it a bit. So now, okay, the neck knows I can normalize to that part of the body. We do not want the neck to be influencing this low. I'm just going to shift blur it. Yeah, there is no shoulder, and that's kind of a funny thing to work around. Yeah, usually you'd have a shoulder because the shoulder requires the most, like out of the entire body, it's kind of the most frustrating thing when you're weight painting, when you're rigging. It's just a pain, a nuisance. So having as much bones there as possible helps. Let's see. Pretty solid. So the clavicle's kind of subbing in as the shoulder for now. Oh, there's some ugly paints there. There we go. Take care. If I'm painting straight down, I'll want to turn off spirit projection. There you go. Clear transformation. Boom. How do you go by mirroring weights to one side from one side to the other? What's your go?
That's literally what I'm looking for now because
Yeah.
normally I have it set to mirror as a weight plane, but
Yeah.
I just tried using the mirror option, but like removing the weights from the mirror, kind of mirroring and trying to get it on that.
That's annoying. That's really annoying. I wonder if the mesh itself isn't fully mirrored properly. I'm going to check. So I'm going to mirror it. You can see I'm mirroring that side over. If I apply it, let's see. Oh, it mirrored it the wrong way. Yes, it mirrored the wrong way. There you go. Apply. So, yeah, that's working. There we go. So I believe the mesh itself had some sort of very small, subtle difference on the mirror. So if you just mirror the side you're weight painting to the other side on the mesh level, then it should work. So you see what I did was I added the mirror before the armature deformation. movement of the shoulder is not bad. I'd say it's decent. Oh, it's a little weird down there. Yeah. Yeah, it is really far, and it should be like the socket should be right there. Yeah. I'm gonna work on the elbow now. So right now it's kind of bending really really strongly. I don't like that. Nice. See, what's today gonna be? Nice. See, I never get to do push days anymore because of my rock line. I mean, it's well, the whole time, yeah. So I've been like make sure I do like my push-ups.
Finger days.
Every day is a finger day when climbing. Yeah, always crimping. Yeah. Bye. There's some clipping. This clipping isn't the worst thing that happened. Sometimes it's necessary if you don't want to add like a bunch of shape keys and drivers. But as long as the outside is nice and smooth like this, a nice smooth transition, you're good. But we can try to fix up this inside as much as possible. A bit of smoothing out. I'm just going to set this out fully. So now we can it's probably the best we can do for now. Yeah. So how's our wrist looking? Yeah, I think so. I think it is. This you know what, this tutorial really, I was like, dang, this is one I have to really make sure, like it's a stressful one to make sure I'm teaching it right because it's super important. Yeah, this one's very important.
Makes you feel better because you got you helped me fix my problem.
That's amazing. I'm so happy that we figured that out. Yeah, that normalization is important to know about. Here we go. Beautiful. Bye bye. Yes. Yes. I didn't do this finger yet. Is it possible to like isolate this part of my mesh when I'm weight painting it? Do you know?
That part of the mesh.
Like if I want to weight paint only the finger area to get everything else hidden without using like a mask modifier. Because what I'm thinking is, what I usually do is I would add a modifier, add a mask, and then just select vertices
Yeah.
to add in that mask. Actually, that might be a way to do it. Go to finger. This could be a way to do it. Which finger is this? Is this third? Maybe 301. I can mask out only that part of the finger. But
Like are you talking like without using the built-in mask and
like what I want to do is I want to be able to just quickly select an area, such as this entire. Oh, where's the finger? Like this entire, all these parts of the finger.
Okay, so yeah, so select them all now. Okay, so
Right.
whatever.
Like just all of these.
I would prefer selecting that.
Yeah, there we go.
And then go back to weight paint. And
Yeah.
then at the top, type weight paint with that face icon.
Oh right. Why is it selecting the chest? What the heck?
Do you have them selected before?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Oops. There you go. It's more of I want to just hide the mesh itself. I don't want to see.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would hide non-selected mesh. I've never tried that.
Yeah, I don't know. Huh. It's not the biggest deal, but it would help. It's probably an add-on for it. My guess.
I have a really jump off in it.
What is it?
Go in edit mode and then select the faces you want to weight paint all of them. Okay, now go to select and invert selection and then hit H.
Ooh. That's not bad. And so
And then Alt H on one.
yes, that's pretty good actually. That's good.
Never tried that before.
Or what I could do is similar to that. Maybe I make a new group. Just call it mask. Right?
And then you keep having to keep assigning.
Yeah. But it'd be so I'd Alt H. So whatever vertices I select.
Yeah. But then if you want to do something else, you first select all of those, so you remove them from that group, then select them and do assign them to that group.
Yeah.
You go
Assign. And then in here. mask.
For the shortcut, remember.
That works. This, but then I have to reassign it later. But
Yeah, so you can select everything, then hit Control Home, then hit H, and then
I'll Control I is the
yeah,
invert.
Yeah.
Good to know. Bye bye. Let's see. Resetting all pose transforms. Let's see. Oh yeah, thank you. Alt G R Alt R R Alt S. Let's see if that works here. Alt G. Yes, it does. Beautiful. Okay, so I don't have to go into the other modes to do it. Okay. Super. Oh, I think that's pretty solid for now. Just go in here. There we go. Okay. I think overall, it's looking pretty good. You can see very nice for the most part. Bending, some minor shading issues.
Oh yeah, I mean it is a very rather low poly analysis.
Oh yeah, definitely. For what it is, I think it's decent. Wrist is a bit off. I could fix that a bit. Let's just go here to boom. That's good actually. Let's see the other hand. I think that does it for this showcase of weight painting. So hope that was very informative and interesting to watch and see. And this will all be posted, of course. I think it's a pretty good amount of content to look back on. It's different than the face, but if you do practice the same workflow of making empty groups and then sort of blocking it out and then fine tuning it later on, that's a really good workflow to do for this. And yeah, thank you all so much. I was gonna chill and maybe work on this a bit, just work on some things. But yeah,